Hello everyone, my name is Educator, also known as the Renaissance Amazon, Queen Lioness, and the Body Scientist. So, as you can see, I go by many names. I hope you all are doing well today. And in this video today, I'm going to discuss what a sacred sexual educator is. I will also do a deeper video about sacred sexuality. I had a very long series about that. Actually, my very first YouTube video that I ever posted back in 2010 was about sacred sexuality. And it got deleted when my old YouTube page was deleted. So it was a very long and detailed talk. So I will have to tap back into that and do that video again. But today, I'm going to talk to you about what a sacred sexuality educator, a sacred sexual educator is. And that is one of the things that I do, and a lot of you have seen me say that. A lot of people have asked me, what is that? And so basically, you know, a lot of people have heard of sex ed or sexuality education. That is something that I have been involved in since I was in high school. I used to work for an organization in high school called NARAL New York, the National Abortion Rights Action League. And what I did as a teenager is I traveled around New York City and spoke to my peers about issues around sexuality. Not about STDs or disease prevention as much as just like the conversation about feelings, like how people feel about sexuality, and also women's grassroots advocacy, and the having access to birth control, you know, as well. Whereas New York City was a place where a young girl who was under 18, if she found herself pregnant, she could get an abortion without her parents knowing, without parents' permission. But in other states, there were laws where you needed one parent's permission or both parents' permission, or if somebody in the family took you over state lines, it was a felony. So the laws were different in each state, and we felt like it's important for it to be, for all women to have access to safe birth control, you know, no matter what their choices are, that is really important. So that and just issues around sexuality is what I spent time doing in high school. And, you know, since I've been grown, you know, I have a background in exercise science, so I study the body, I study the performance of the body. And then with my dance background, which since I've been grown, I've been studying dances of the African diaspora, particularly in the Americas. And they're all rooted in the hips and sexuality. They, you know, sexual energy flows through those dances, and it's a part of the lessons to be learned and the healing of the dances. And so these dances taught me a lot as well, okay? And maybe about 12 years ago, I started working with yoni eggs, punani eggs, which many of you have heard me speak about. And if you haven't, you can check the various videos on this page. And also my other page, The Body Scientist 81. I have two YouTube pages, Renaissance Amazon and The Body Scientist 81. You can check my numerous videos about the use of yoni eggs or punani eggs. And so I started working with them 12 years ago in 2005. And around that time, I started to read a lot about Taoist sacred sexual practices. I don't call myself a practitioner of Tantra because my foundation at first was in the Taoist philosophy. And then I went on to study other sacred sexual practices. So Taoism, which comes out of ancient China, is a sacred sexual practice. They spent, the ancient Taoists spent like a few thousand years studying sexuality, specific acts, specific sexual acts, and how it affects our physical health and our spirit. And Tantra, you could say, is kind of similar, but it's out of India. But every culture had some sort of sacred sexuality. And so I don't just look at one place. Like, I'm not just looking at Tantra or looking at Taoism. I'm looking at everything all around the world. And the sacred sexual practice, a lot of sacred sexual practices and sacred sexual cosmology in the Afro-Indigenous context, like in Africa and Native Americans, is embedded in the art. You know, it's embedded in the dancing. It's embedded in the statues, you know, what is written in stone. Because Africans and Native Americans were more of an oral culture. So a lot of things are passed down that way. And so there's so much that I've learned over the years by studying these things. And really, a sacred sexual educator, what it is that we do is, I'm so sorry about these sounds. I am here to teach people who may or may not have sexual issues. There are a lot of people who have sexual hang-ups and sexual issues because of either trauma or religious upbringing. A lot of people that have issues with their sexuality is coming from religion, especially the three main: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Could cause a lot of sexual suppression and issues in people, in men and women. And then there's so many people that have dealt with sexual abuse, unfortunately, and just society, you know, patriarchal religions basically making society have a fear of sex and sexuality. When we have sex ed in school, we don't learn about the healing properties of sex. It's all fear-based. It's all about, oh, you know, you could get these diseases, you know, and don't get pregnant, and those are the only two things, you know, and it's so focused on the diseases you can get. And while that is a real thing, you can get diseases eating food, you can eat diseases drinking water, you can get diseases breathing air, walking by and breathing somebody's, you know, somebody spit on the ground and you breathe and they have tuberculosis. I mean, you can get diseases, will always be exposed to infectious disease. Sex is not unique in that way. Now, but there's such a focus on that. And there are a lot of things, too, to do to keep yourself healthy, which is, I'll do another video about that. I had a video about that on my other YouTube page that got deleted, but I will do a video about sexual health and how to, and prevention. I actually do have a video called Toxic Condoms on one of my YouTube pages, not sure which one. If you check both of them, you should be able to find it. And so in that video, I do get into some sexual health issues. I also have a video about yoni steaming, or bajos, in the Mexican tradition, which is dealing with steaming the banana with herbs. I have a video about that as well, but I will do a more detailed video about sexual health. Anyhow, the thing that we are not taught is, we are not taught about the healing properties, okay? The healing properties behind sex and sexuality. Hold on, I'm trying to see if I want to put this on the YouTube live. No. Okay, so we're not taught about the healing properties, and the Taoists and the research that they did had a lot to do with the healing properties. They use sexual energy to strengthen their spirit. They use sexual energy to become spiritually immortal, you know, and it affects your hormones. Like when you're cultivating sexual energy, it affects your hormones, your spirit, all those things, your mental capacity. And we are sexual beings. We all come from sex, okay? We're all here because our parents had sex, period. And we're sexual beings. And our sexual genitalia is in our root chakra. The root chakra is where life comes from. That's where the fire starts and heat rises, right? So it's very, very important. And when sexual suppression causes people to be a little crazy, it can cause illness and all kinds of issues. So, and I also believe that severe sexual suppression, especially coming out of religion, is also part of what creates perverts. You know, people start getting perversions. Usually those people grew up with some very strict, you know, suppression or abuse, okay? And so sexuality is sacred, okay? And that does not mean that it's something to be afraid of or something that you should never use or that you need to keep bottled up. You know, it's a powerful force, and it's a powerful healing force. And part of, you know, tapping into that, whether you're a man or a woman, has to do with strengthening the muscles around your sexual organs, mentally connecting, having that mind genitalia connection and connecting to that, strengthening those muscles, cultivating that energy, and building that energy, moving the energy around the body, circulating it around the body, storing the energy, meditating with the energy. And these are things that I teach in my classes, and I also teach one-on-one. And I also study a lot of like pre-colonial customs. So what was the mindset? Oh, I have this book that I want to show you, but it's over there. I'm not. What was the mindset and customs of people? Africans, Native Americans, Asians, Europeans, Polynesians, prior to colonization, prior to being told that sexuality was bad. And the best book that, and I would grab it for you, but the best book that I suggest looking at is a book called Sex at Dawn. It was a New York Times bestseller. Out of all of the books that I've ever read on sexuality, Sex at Dawn is the absolute best book. I highly recommend it, cannot recommend it enough, that you get this book and you read this book, right? But in that book, there's a lot of research and discussions with indigenous people or people in different places who remember what it was like pre-colonial, and they're talking about their how they saw sexuality, you know. And if you look at the documents of the colonizers, right, you see the things that they wrote when they landed in the Caribbean and they came in contact with indigenous people, when they landed in the Polynesian islands and they came in contact with indigenous people, and they wrote about, oh, these people are still sexual, they're so free, you know. There was a story at Sex and Dawn where some colonizers wrote about how they saw like a bunch of Polynesian people, I think it was in Hawaiian Islands, cover themselves in coconut oil. They were butt naked, covered themselves in coconut oil, got on a little boat, went to another island, and got off in the beach and had sex with everybody that was there. And the colonizers were writing about how, you know, which a lot of times they're missionaries, we're writing about how this is so indecent and it's a heathen behavior, and they use that in order to condemn the people and use it as a way to justify the abuse and the murdering and the stealing of culture and suppression and everything else. You know, they pass that judgment on these people, which is coming out of patriarchal religion. And Europe itself, before they came over here and started colonizing people, Europe already had their own, you know, witch hunts for a few hundred years where they killed millions of women for being witches, you know, and those witches had herbs to help women, you know, with fertility, either to stop it or to aid in it or help with childbirth. And these women, all that became outlawed, and they became like these evil people that needed to be murdered and condemned. And so that happened in Europe too. Every culture has a sacred sexual practice, you know, has sacred sexual cosmologies. And the more that I've studied them, there's a lot more in common than different, you know. And I'll get into that in my sacred sexuality video that I'll do later, because it'll be like 30 minutes of me talking. I just want to, you know, get into what a sacred sexuality educator is. So for me, I'm coming from a place that sex and sexual energy is a healthy thing. It's a normal thing, you know. We should not be ashamed and holding on to shame about our sexuality and our sexual desires, unless you are desiring to rape somebody, or you desire to do that or have done that, or messing with kids and children. That's the only time that something is wrong with you. But if you desire, you know, somebody of the same sex, or you know, you desire two people of the same sex or opposite, two different, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? We all have different things that turn us on. Sexuality is very complex, and people are turned on by all sorts of things. And there should be no shame in that, you know what I'm saying? There should be no shame in that, and it's important for you to be right with yourself and also work on cultivating that energy, opening up your channels. So this is what I teach in my classes. I teach people to strengthen the muscles that support their sexual organs, open up the channels, move that sexual energy for healing purposes, storing that energy, channeling that energy, and getting the channels open, okay? And so, and then, you know, like a lot of you who follow my work know that I do, I'm an art model, and I'm also a dancer. And so my education extends into what I do, you know, into my artwork as well. So that's also an educational tool for me. And so, yeah, like, sexuality educator in general is somebody who educates people about sexuality. But the reason why I say sacred sexual educator is because I'm looking at sacred sexual practices. It's not just like, you know, modern day sexuality that also can be fear-based sometimes. And not, for me, I'm more rooted in indigenous thought, indigenous ways of being, pre-colonial ways of being, which was the healthiest. And, you know, we are sexual beings, and we need to free that up and be comfortable with that. A lot of people who are raised religious, you know, who start to realize that there's a problem with the suppression, they can spend most of their life trying to, like, you know, unlearn that and remove those shackles. And that's also true, I've seen it in so many different types of people. People who are raised as very religious Jews, people who are raised as very religious Muslims, people who are raised as very religious Christians or Catholics, and never being taught about the sacredness of sexuality. The fact that when we orgasm, we release a beneficial essence, and our partners can absorb that from us, and vice versa. We're never taught that. It's all about fear, 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 and so that means something. People like to talk about the law of attraction, which I feel like is flawed, but there is some truth to it. So if you're constantly just projecting this fear that, you're so scared of sex, you're so afraid of your sexuality, you do something and then you feel so much shame afterwards. And what you did wasn't hurting anyone. Like for myself, I'm a bisexual woman, and I know so many bisexual women or people who try to act like they're one thing. A lot of times they may try to act like they're straight because they're afraid of what people may think, and so then they do something today and then tomorrow they're like beating themselves up and they feel guilty because they feel like this is inappropriate. But as long as it's two consenting adults, there's nothing inappropriate. Unless you're like, having sex with your mother's husband or, like your best friend's husband, like that's not cool. Like to me, that's not cool. A lot of people do scandalous stuff like that, but to me, there are boundaries. I would never, mess around with my friends' men or, like messing around with, like parents, partners, whatever. That is not cool. But other than that, I say as long as it's two consenting adults, that there's no reason to be feeling guilt and shame. Okay, and like it's really important to feel one with yourself. And like as a bisexual woman, I've never felt quite like I belonged in any one category, because the lesbian world a lot of times is very unaccepting to bisexual women because they don't understand that we still have a need for men. We love men, but no matter, I love men, but no matter how much I love men, I will always need female energy in my life. There's no man that's that amazing that I'm going to say, you know what, I don't need to touch a woman again. It's not going to happen. Well, on the flip side, there's no woman that I could be with that can take the energy in the place of what I get from a man. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of times society wants us to choose one side. So a lot of people who are bisexual, like they either, they say they don't like that term and they try to just fit over here or suppress themselves. Like now they're with a man, so they try to act like, well, I don't like girls now because he's not okay with it. I should do another video about that, just the complexities of being a bisexual person. But it can be really tough. People think that it's like something that's so glamorous and you're doing that to be cute and all men love it. No, that's not true. It actually brings a lot more complications. But still, knowing who you are and being comfortable with who you are and standing strong in who you are is so important. And then having a sacred sexual practice of building up and cultivating sexual energy and moving that sexual energy, because sexual energy is healing energy, period. You know what I'm saying? Sexual energy is also spiritual energy. There's a huge connection. They're the same continuum, and that's what I will speak about in my sacred sexuality video when I do it. But sexual energy and spiritual energy are of the same continuum, and that needs to be remembered. That is so important. Cultivating sexual energy and orgasmic energy helps to strengthen your spirits, and I will get more into that in my sacred sexuality video. But as a sacred sexual educator, these are the kind of things that I teach. These are the kind of things I help people with. People that may be dealing with all kinds of different sexual issues for a variety of reasons. So I hope that this video made sense. I've just been talking for almost 19 minutes. I hope that it made sense. And if you learned something from this video, please subscribe to my page and share it. And I have online video classes for men, Kundalini strength training for men, and also my Cosmic Yoni class online for women. I have in-person classes for women, sensual strength training and sacred Purnani power, and I'm always available to work with people one-on-one as well. And so that's that. So thank you for listening, and have a great day, people. Bye-bye.